Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into Will Trent Season 3, Episode 3, titled Shadows of the Past. If you've been following our recaps of the first two episodes, you know we're in for another emotional roller coaster as Will continues to navigate both professional challenges and personal demons. This Will Trent Season 3, Episode 3 recap will cover everything from the long-awaited confrontation between Will and Angie to significant developments in the ongoing police corruption investigation. Episode 3 delivers some of the most emotionally charged scenes of the season so far, while introducing a new case that hits uncomfortably close to home for Will. If you're new here, I'm Amelia, and on this channel, we break down all your favorite crime dramas with the attention to detail that would make Will Trent himself proud. Before we get started, make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss any of our weekly Will Trent recaps. Now, I need to give you all a major spoiler warning. We're going to discuss everything that happened in episode 3, so if you haven't watched it yet, this is your chance to pause this video and come back after you've seen it. Trust me, you'll want to experience these powerful moments firsthand. For those of you who are ready, let's jump into this Will Trent Season 3, Episode 3 recap and unpack what might be one of the most revealing episodes about Will's past traumas and how they continue to shape his present. So grab your snacks, settle in, and let's dive into Shadows of the Past. Before we dive into Episode 3, let's quickly recap where we left off in the first two episodes of Season 3. Will returned to Atlanta after a 6-month absence following his breakup with Angie, immediately thrust into investigating a shooting at a police barbecue that left one officer dead and another injured. The investigation led Will to reconnect with Raphael Wexford, the leader of the Piedmont Kings gang, and someone from Will's past who, along with his grandmother, Miss Pearl, had given Will a home when he aged out of the foster care system. This revelation added new layers to Will's backstory and helped explain some of his complex feelings about justice and loyalty. Will also met Assistant District Attorney Marion Alba, with whom he shared an unexpected connection. Their initial professional interaction hinted at potential personal developments to come. By the end of Episode 2, the team had successfully rescued Raphael's kidnapped daughter Sunny and apprehended Officer Kelsey, one of the corrupt APD officers behind both the shooting and kidnapping. However, one corrupt officer managed to escape, suggesting the police corruption storyline would continue. The episode ended with two significant personal developments. Will learned that Miss Pearl had once tried to adopt him from the foster system but was denied, and Angie was seen watching Will from her car, suggesting their inevitable confrontation was imminent. With these threads left hanging, Episode 3 picks up with both the ongoing corruption investigation and the personal reckonings that Will can no longer avoid. The Will Trent Season 3 Episode 3 recap begins with the long-awaited confrontation. Episode 3 wastes no time delivering what fans have been waiting for since the Season 2 finale, the confrontation between Will and Angie. The scene opens with Will returning home late after visiting Miss Pearl, only to find Angie sitting on his porch with Betty curled up beside her. The Will Trent-Angie confrontation is immediately tense, with both characters clearly struggling with unresolved emotions. Their conversation begins awkwardly with surface-level pleasantries that quickly give way to the real issues between them. Angie breaks the tension first, directly addressing Will's 6-month disappearance. "You just left, Will." No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. The hurt in her voice is palpable, revealing that despite their complicated history, his absence affected her deeply. Will's response is characteristically measured but emotionally charged. He explains that he needed space to process her betrayal, her choice to protect Crystal despite knowing she was a killer. "You chose her over justice," Will says, the pain evident in his voice. "I couldn't reconcile that with everything I believe in, everything I am." What makes this Will Trent-Angie confrontation so powerful is how it showcases their intimate knowledge of each other's wounds. Angie counters by pointing out Will's pattern of running away when emotions become too complicated, a defense mechanism developed during his traumatic childhood. You've been running your whole life, Will. From the system, from connections, from me. The conversation takes an unexpected turn when Angie reveals she's been seeing a therapist during Will's absence, working through her own trauma and making efforts to break destructive patterns. This admission catches Will off guard. Angie has always been as resistant to therapy as he has. The scene reaches its emotional peak when Angie finally tells Will about her pregnancy. The revelation is handled with remarkable restraint. No dramatic music, no shouting, just Angie simply stating, "I'm pregnant, Will. About 5 months now." The camera focuses on Will's face as he processes this information, his expression shifting from shock to confusion to a complex mix of emotions that's difficult to name. When Will asks if Seth is the father, Angie nods, creating a moment of painful silence between them. The Will Trent Angie confrontation doesn't end with neat resolution, but with a tentative agreement to try to find a new way forward, not as romantic partners, but as two people with too much history to simply walk away from each other. This opening sequence sets the emotional tone for the entire episode, establishing that while the external investigations continue, the internal reckonings are equally important to the season's narrative. Will Trent childhood trauma resurfaces through a disturbing new case? The episode shifts focus as Will and Faith are called to investigate a disturbing new case. The discovery of a deceased child's remains during a construction project at an abandoned building that once served as a group home for foster children. This case immediately triggers Will's own Will Trent childhood trauma, creating a deeply personal connection to the investigation. The crime scene is handled with appropriate gravity. As Will examines the small remains carefully preserved in the foundation of the building, his typically detached professional demeanor slips momentarily. Faith notices, asking if he needs a minute, but Will insists on continuing. This subtle interaction highlights their strengthened partnership. Faith now recognizes when cases hit too close to home for Will. The investigation reveals that the group home operated from 1985 to 1997, overlapping with part of Will's time in the foster system. Though he never lived at this particular home, the connection to the system that failed him is unmistakable. When interviewing former staff members, Will's questioning becomes noticeably more intense, prompting Faith to occasionally step in. A breakthrough comes when they identify the victim as 8-year-old Marcus Jenkins, who was reported as a runaway in 1992, but, as the evidence now shows, never left the facility. The parallels to Will's own childhood are striking. Marcus was described as difficult, troubled, and prone to running away, labels commonly applied to foster children exhibiting trauma responses. The Will Trent childhood trauma resurfaces most powerfully during a scene where Will and Faith interview a former resident who knew Marcus. The witness describes the harsh punishments and isolation used to control problem children. As he speaks, the camera cuts between his testimony and brief flashbacks of Will's own experiences, a technique the show has used sparingly but effectively to illustrate Will's past, without explicit exposition. Amanda Wagner recognizes the toll this case is taking on Will and offers him the option to step back, a rare acknowledgement of his personal connection to the investigation. In a revealing moment, Will refuses, stating, "These kids get forgotten. Their files get closed and no one ever knows what really happened to them. I can't walk away from this." This statement encapsulates Will's driving motivation, ensuring that victims like Marcus, and by extension like his younger self, receive the justice and attention they deserve. The Will Trent S3E3 analysis of this storyline reveals how effectively the show continues to explore Will's past trauma without reducing him to his wounds. His personal connection to the case makes him more determined rather than compromised, turning his trauma into a source of insight and empathy rather than merely a vulnerability. Will Trent biological father development. The Will Trent biological father development adds complexity to Will's identity. As Will grapples with the foster home case, the episode also advances the storyline with his biological father, Sheriff Caleb Roussar. Following the revelations about Miss Pearl's attempted adoption, Will decides to confront Caleb directly about his absence during Will's childhood. Their meeting takes place at a neutral location, a quiet park on the outskirts of Atlanta. The Will Trent biological father development in this scene is nuanced, avoiding both overly sentimental reconciliation and complete rejection. Instead, it presents two men with a biological connection trying to navigate what that means after decades of separation. Caleb attempts to explain his absence, revealing that he didn't know about Will until years after his birth. By then, Will was already in the foster system, and Caleb claims he tried to find him but was blocked by bureaucratic obstacles. Will, skeptical by nature and profession, questions this account. You were law enforcement. You had resources. If you wanted to find me, you could have. The tension escalates when Will asks the question that's been haunting him. Did you know my mother was pregnant when she disappeared? Caleb's hesitation before answering speaks volumes, suggesting there's more to the story than he's sharing. He eventually admits that he suspected she might be pregnant, but didn't confirm it before she vanished. This revelation leads to the most significant Will Trent biological father development of the episode. Will's decision to investigate his mother's disappearance himself. He tells Caleb directly, I'm going to find out what happened to her, with or without your help. This declaration establishes a new investigative thread for the season, while further complicating Will's relationship with his newfound father. The scene ends with Caleb offering Will a file containing what little information he has about Will's mother, including her last known whereabouts and associates. This gesture, while potentially helpful, doesn't erase Will's suspicions about Caleb's role in his mother's story. The Will-Trent biological father relationship remains fraught with unresolved questions and tensions that will likely continue to develop throughout the season. What makes this storyline particularly compelling is how it intersects with the foster home case. Both narratives explore abandonment, institutional failures, and the search for truth about the past. Will's determination to solve both mysteries, what happened to Marcus Jenkins and what happened to his mother, stems from the same core need to bring light to forgotten victims. GBI corruption investigation. The GBI corruption investigation reveals deeper conspiracy. While Will and Faith focus on the foster home case, the police corruption storyline continues to unfold. Amanda Wagner leads this aspect of the investigation, working with Ormwood to track down the escaped corrupt officer from episode 2 and uncover the full extent of the conspiracy within the APD. The GBI corruption investigation takes a significant turn when they discover financial transactions linking several high-ranking APD officials to offshore accounts similar to Officer Kelsey's. This suggests the corruption extends far beyond a few rogue officers and may reach the highest levels of the department. Ormwood finds himself in an increasingly difficult position as the investigation progresses. His loyalty to the APD conflicts with his commitment to justice, especially when evidence implicates officers he's worked with for years. This internal struggle manifests in a tense scene where he confronts Amanda about the investigation's scope. Are we looking for corrupt individuals, or are you trying to take down the entire department? Amanda's response is characteristically direct. I'm looking for the truth, wherever it leads. If that's uncomfortable for you, I understand. But I need to know if you're with us or not. This ultimatum forces Ormwood to make a definitive choice about where his loyalties lie. The GBI corruption investigation gains momentum when they identify the escaped officer, Detective Ray Sanchez, at a remote cabin outside Atlanta. The operation to apprehend him is meticulously planned, but just as they're about to move in, they discover Sanchez dead from an apparent suicide. However, Amanda immediately notices inconsistencies in the scene that suggest murder disguised as suicide, a clear attempt to silence Sanchez before he could reveal what he knew. This development raises the stakes significantly, indicating that whoever is behind the corruption is willing to kill to protect their operation. The GBI corruption investigation now becomes not just about police misconduct, but about a potential conspiracy involving murder. The episode connects the storyline to the main narrative when Amanda pulls Will from the foster home case to examine the Sanchez crime scene. Will's unique observational skills reveal subtle evidence that the killer was likely someone Sanchez knew and trusted, possibly another officer. This realization leads to a chilling conclusion. The team can't trust anyone within the APD until they identify all involved parties. The GBI corruption investigation storyline effectively balances the more personal elements of the episode with high stakes procedural drama. It also continues to explore one of the show's central themes: the tension between institutional loyalty and individual integrity, a conflict that resonates deeply with Will's character and history. Marion Alba. Will relationship. The Marion Alba Will relationship develops amid personal turmoil. As Will navigates both the foster home case and his complicated feelings about Angie's pregnancy, his connection with ADA Marion Alba continues to develop. The Marion Alba Will relationship provides a counterpoint to Will's other relationships, offering a potential fresh start untainted by their complicated histories. Their interaction in this episode begins professionally, with Marion providing legal guidance on the foster home case. She explains the challenges of prosecuting crimes from decades ago, particularly when the primary suspects may be deceased or evidence degraded. However, she's committed to finding a path to justice for Marcus Jenkins, aligning with Will's determination to solve the case. The conversation shifts to personal territory when Marion notices Will's distraction. In a moment of unexpected vulnerability, Will mentions his conversation with Angie and her pregnancy revelation. Marion's reaction is measured and empathetic, avoiding judgment while acknowledging the complexity of the situation. This response stands in contrast to the more emotionally charged interactions Will typically experiences with those who know his history with Angie. The Marion Alba Will relationship takes a significant step forward when she invites him to dinner, not to discuss cases, but simply to enjoy each other's company. Will's hesitation is visible, his instinct to retreat from personal connections battling with his desire to move forward. In a small but meaningful character development, he accepts the invitation, making a conscious choice to open himself to new possibilities. Their dinner scene is one of the episode's most charming moments. Marion shares stories about her family and background, while Will gradually becomes more comfortable sharing selective details about himself. When she asks about his childhood, he doesn't immediately shut down, as he might have in earlier seasons, instead offering a carefully edited version that acknowledges his time in foster care without dwelling on the trauma. What makes the Marion Alba Will relationship particularly interesting is how it highlights Will's growth. With Marion, he's making active choices about what to share and when, rather than either completely withdrawing or being forced to confront his past through circumstance. This agency represents significant character development for Will. The scene ends with a moment of genuine connection when Marion admits she's researched Will's background cases, but wants to hear about his life from him directly. Rather than feeling invaded or exposed, Will appreciates her honesty. Most people pretend they don't know, then tiptoe around what they think might be sensitive, he tells her. I prefer your approach. This budding relationship provides a hopeful counterpoint to the episode's heavier themes, suggesting that despite the shadows of his past, Will might be finding a path toward a different kind of future. Will Trent S3E3 analysis. A deep will. Trent S3E3 analysis reveals interconnected themes. Looking beyond the plot mechanics, Shadows of the Past excels in its thematic coherence, weaving together seemingly disparate storylines through shared themes of truth, justice, and the impact of the past on the present. This Will Trent season. Episode 3 analysis examines how these elements create a rich narrative tapestry. The episode's title, Shadows of the Past, works on multiple levels. Most literally, it refers to the foster home case, and the literal remains hidden in the shadows for decades. On a character level, it represents the shadows Will's past casts on his present. his childhood trauma, his complicated relationship with Angie, and the mystery of his mother's disappearance. For the corruption investigation, it suggests how past misconduct continues to influence current events within the APD. The theme of institutional failure runs throughout the episode. The foster care system failed both Will and Marcus Jenkins. The police department, meant to protect the public, harbors corruption that threatens the very communities it serves. Even the justice system, represented by Marion, acknowledges its limitations in addressing historical wrongs. These institutional shortcomings are contrasted with individual efforts to create change. Will's determination to solve cold cases, Amanda's pursuit of corrupt officers regardless of rank, and Marion's commitment to finding legal pathways to justice. Another prominent theme is the tension between truth and comfort. Will could accept Caleb's explanation about his mother, but his commitment to truth drives him to investigate further, despite the potential pain of what he might discover. Similarly, Ormwood could turn a blind eye to corruption among his colleagues, but ultimately chooses the uncomfortable truth over comfortable loyalty. The Will Trent season. Episode 3 analysis reveals how the episode uses visual storytelling to reinforce these themes. The foster home is filmed in cold, desaturated tones that evoke both its abandonment in the present and its emotional barrenness in the past. Scenes between Will and Caleb use physical distance and framing to illustrate their emotional disconnection. In contrast, Will and Marion's dinner scene is warm and intimately shot, suggesting the potential for genuine connection. Character development in this episode is particularly noteworthy. Will shows growth in his willingness to engage with difficult emotions rather than retreat from them. Angie demonstrates self-awareness through her therapy journey. Even Amanda reveals new dimensions when she acknowledges the personal toll the foster home case might take on Will, showing that her tough exterior conceals genuine concern for her agents. This Will Trent episode 3 breakdown wouldn't be complete without acknowledging how the episode advances the season's larger narrative. The corruption investigation is clearly building toward a confrontation with high-ranking officials. Will's investigation into his mother's disappearance establishes a personal mystery that will likely intersect with his professional cases. And the evolving relationships, Will and Angie, Will and Marion, Will and Caleb, create emotional stakes that complement the procedural elements of the show. Will Trent Episode 3 Breakdown. This Will Trent Episode 3 breakdown offers insights into future developments. Based on the developments in Episode 3, we can make some educated guesses about where Season 3 might be heading. This Will Trent Episode 3 breakdown provides several clues about future storylines. The foster home case is unlikely to be resolved quickly. Given its connection to Will's past and the challenges of investigating decades-old crimes, this investigation will probably span multiple episodes. The show might use this case to introduce other survivors from the home who could provide insights into both the murder and Will's own experiences in similar institutions. Will's investigation into his mother's disappearance will likely become a significant season-long arc. The file Caleb provided offers a starting point, but Will's thorough approach suggests he'll dig much deeper, potentially uncovering secrets that Caleb would prefer remain buried. This investigation might eventually reveal whether Caleb was more involved in his mother's disappearance than he admits. The police corruption storyline is clearly building toward a major confrontation. With evidence now pointing to high-ranking officials and the murder of Detective Sanchez, the stakes have increased dramatically. This investigation could lead to a departmental purge that would significantly impact Ormwood's career and the GBI's relationship with the APD. Angie's pregnancy will continue to affect her relationship with Will, even as they try to establish new boundaries. As her pregnancy progresses, Will may struggle with his role in her life and the child's future. This situation could become even more complicated if questions arise about the child's paternity, a possibility subtly hinted at in their conversation. The Marion-Alba-Will relationship appears to be developing toward romance, offering Will a different kind of connection than his history-laden relationship with Angie. However, as the corruption case grows more dangerous, Marion's position as an ADA might put her at risk, especially if the conspiracy extends to the district attorney's office. Faith's character arc seems to be moving toward greater leadership responsibility. Her growing confidence and the respect she commands from both Will and Amanda suggest she might be offered a promotion or special assignment later in the season. Miss Pearl's revelation about trying to adopt Will opens the door to more exploration of his childhood. We might see Will investigating what specifically prevented her adoption application, potentially uncovering systemic issues that affected many children beyond himself. The Amanda Wagner Will mentor relationship will likely continue to be a stabilizing force for Will as he navigates these personal and professional challenges. Amanda's guidance has been crucial to Will's development, and their bond might be tested as the corruption case potentially reaches higher levels of law enforcement. Based on this Will Trent Episode 3 breakdown, Season 3 appears to be balancing procedural elements with deeper character exploration, using cases to illuminate personal histories while maintaining the show's commitment to complex, morally nuanced storytelling. As we wrap up this Will Trent Season 3 Episode 3 recap, I want to thank you for joining me for this in-depth analysis of Shadows of the Past. This episode brilliantly balances multiple storylines while deepening our understanding of Will's character and setting up compelling arcs for the season ahead. What did you think of the episode? Were you satisfied with the Will and Angie confrontation? How do you feel about the potential relationship developing between Will and Marion? And what theories do you have about Will's mother's disappearance? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this recap, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more in-depth analysis of Will Trent and other crime dramas. I'll be back next week with a breakdown of Episode 4, where we'll likely see developments in both the foster home case and the corruption investigation. Thank you again for watching this Will Trent Season 3, Episode 3 recap. Until next time, keep those detective skills sharp, and I'll see you in the comments.